and welcome to another off-the-shelf board game review. Today we're going to look at Zombicide. Zombicide is a cooperative board game for 1 to 6 players. It's designed by, and I hope I am pronouncing this right, I tried to find good pronunciations but I didn't have much success, so should be designer Raphael Guiton, Jean-Baptiste Lullian, and Nicolas Raoult. It's published by Cool Mini or Not and by Guillotine Games. This is a scenario-based board game, so playtime can range anywhere from an hour all the way up to 3 hours depending on the luck of the draw, scenario chosen, and just how random and lucky or unlucky the dice and the cards are treating you today. And finally, Zombicide retails for $89.99. In Zombicide, each player is going to take the role of one of the survivors in a zombie apocalypse, searching all over the city trying to find supplies that are going to help them escape the zombie apocalypse. Of course, they need to try to avoid getting wounds because there's going to be tons of zombies coming their way trying to take them down. And by lots of zombies, we mean lots and lots of zombies. Each player is going to get a control of one hero to move around the board, searching all over for everything they need. And combat is going to be judged with rolls of the dice. Thematically, while a board game such as Last 9 Earths would be the Sam Raimi Evil Dead level of a board game, Zombicide is pretty much 28 Days Later, or even the We're Alive podcast if you're familiar with that and listen to it. And if you ever have a chance to look at the Abomination, you might just start seeing a couple of visions of the Resident Evil movies. The Zombicide retails for $90, and for that $90 you're actually getting quite a lot of components for your money. The game comes with 65 zombie miniatures, 6 survivor miniatures, and you'll notice that there are a lot of different sculpts for them. One other thing I want to take a quick moment to mention is that the game does ship each package of the zombies in a little extra box. The box is nice, it actually holds them very well, but I just like taking the box out, and I actually don't even use the box. I saved it only for the review purposes only, and I'm actually going to toss it. Nothing wrong with the box. It actually kept everything nice and tight in there, but for me it was just easier just to pull the stuff in and out, and I don't keep my box games on the side, so it's pretty easy just to keep it flat. But if you like keeping your box games on the side, hang on to these boxes. It keeps all the components, and they're nice and snug in the box. Anyways, the game does come with lots of miniatures. As I was saying, there are multiple different sculpts for all the miniatures including the game. You notice there's 2 different sculpts for the runners, 1 sculpt for the fatty. Then the walkers have 5 different sculpts for them total. If you pull them out, you'll actually see there's quite a bit of detail on each one of these miniatures. You'll even notice that the lady's wearing earrings. I'm sorry, the zombie lady is still wearing earrings. They're pretty decent. They actually do paint them pretty darn well. They actually have enough detail to hold and look really darn good when they're painted. Show you one of the runners what they look like. You'll see there's detail even in his hood. You can see his face and everything like that. Lots of good detail in the clothing. Even the fatties, if you look close enough to them, you can see that they're wearing a sleeveless t-shirt. Get in on the camera, zoom in. So again, lots of really good detail on the miniatures. They did a really good job of that. And like I said, there are literally 65 zombie miniatures that come with the game. Quite a bit of plastic in the game, especially for the amount of detail on them. Show you the Abomination again. Again, the Abomination has a lot of good detail. Going to be pretty reminiscent of almost the large monster creature from the Resident Evil movies if you saw those. Each one of the survivors is actually going to be a different color, which is a nice little touch. Prevents you from having to paint the miniatures if you don't like to, and they're easy to recognize on the board by the color. Also matches the character cards. Again, very good detail on the survivors. You can see that she's wielding a chainsaw. And if you look, she even has roller skates on. So again, they did a great job on the miniatures. The game also comes with the survivor cards, which are basically going to be each character gets one of these at the start of the game. Pretty good cardboard quality. They're double-sided if you want to create your own survivors, and apparently Guillotine Games has some extra survivors you can download from the internet and use their stats on the backside. You can write them in or photocopy these and make extra copies of the survivors you can find online. The game does use smaller cards, and again, for people like me who have larger hands, these cards are kind of a pain in the neck. Fortunately, the cards are good quality. They don't bend very easily. They're a good thick cardstock, which is really nice. And the artwork on them is pretty decent, pretty simplistic, but it's pretty good. You can just go through them and see that there's pretty decent artwork on all of them. The zombie cards use a silhouette. They don't have any pictures of zombies, but they have little silhouettes. Walkers, 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 walkers. Fatty, walker, nothing. But they use silhouettes to describe what kind of zombies are going to pop. Again, the cards are smaller. I don't like small cards. I'm actually not a fan of small cards at all, but this is one of those rare instances where I like them. For a simple fact that you can keep a smaller player board and you're supposed to lay these cards down, preventing you from having to have an extremely large player board. So I guess I have to take the good with the bad in that aspect. Again, more of the cardboard. Cardboard is pretty good, thick cardboard stock, almost game board thickness. They're double-sided for the Pimpmobile and the police car. Game has some good dice. They're standard sized dice, nothing special, nothing fancy, but they're definitely not the minis that sometimes play games. Again, more cardboard. The rulebook that comes with the game is, I'll just say it right now, the first edition rulebook is not written very well at all. There is a third revision of the rulebook that you can find online. I'm going to go ahead and include the URL for that at the bottom of this video. And through the magic of video editing technology, you should see the URL flashing across the bottom of the screen right now. Again, if you don't know how to play Zombicide, I would take this rulebook, have a look through it, save it for the turn summary, or do what I did and just make a photocopy of it, and download the rulebook, which has the fixed and upgraded rules, and print out a corrected turn summary. Actually, I shouldn't say corrected, because the turn summary on the back is actually pretty darn decent. This one is a little more clarifying, and again, much better to just download the rulebook from the internet because it has a lot more examples, a lot better verbiage used to describe the rules. And this rulebook right here, just to give you an idea of the difference, is 27 pages. The rulebook you're going to download online, which is the version 3 of the rulebook, is 32 pages, so you can tell they add a lot of clarification. Nice rulebook, nice quality, everything is nice. Problem is the rulebook isn't very specific, and even some of the scenarios in the book actually have errors in it, like Grindhouse. Finally, we're going to come to the player boards. The game comes with 9 of them. These are going to be used to create the board that you're going to play on each time. They're made of pretty good thick quality cardboard, nice artwork, colorful and everything like that. And while they are double-sided, you'll notice that the artwork pretty much duplicates on a lot of them. Now, they're not all like this, but you can see that there is some duplication of the artwork. Again, nothing terrible, but it kind of reduces the variety in the game. But with 9 double-sided tiles, 10 scenarios, you're going to get a lot of variety. Not really a big deal, just something worth mentioning for some people who may want to notice that or not. Again, Zombicide is a $90 game. For what you're getting for that $90, you're getting a lot of monetary value out of this game. You're looking at over 70 plastic miniatures, good dice, some good thick cardboard, cardstock used for the game board. $90, great value. I'm going to give you a quick overview of how to play Zombicide, but before I do that, I want to show you how all the components are used in the game. I have a sample game board laid out. Now, this isn't a real scenario. The game does come with 10 scenarios, but I don't want to ruin any of them for you, so I just picked 4 random tiles and just laid them out. You notice that on the tiles there's crosswalks. Every one of these crosswalks is going to encircle a zone. A zone is basically used for movement. So if a miniature is on this space, if you wanted to move one space, he moves from another zone. So from zone to zone to zone is one movement. You cannot move diagonal in this game. Every movement is side to side, up and down. There is no diagonal movement allowed, no diagonal vision allowed, or any kind of diagonals. It's all orthogonal. Inside the buildings, you'll notice that there's little walls. Each one of the walls presents a zone inside the building. So from here, you can spend 1 move to go here, spend 1 move to go here, or spend 2 moves to go right through the archways and the door openings. Line of sight in the game is unlimited. If you have a figure right here, you can see all the way to the end of the wall there. If your figure's right here, your line of sight goes all the way here. The caveat to that is, though, that doors lower your line of sight. If you had a door right here and your miniature was right here, you can see into this room only. You cannot see into this room or this room again because of diagonals. If you're in this space right here, you can see into this space, you can see into this space, you cannot see into this space because it's basically 4 rooms broken up into a building. From inside a building you can see out, from outside a building you can see in, but it's only one space. So for example, if you were in this zone right here looking down, you cannot look all the way through. Even though that there graphically it would seem that you could look all the way down, the rules say that when you're looking inside a building you can only look one zone in. So from here to here you can see here, but you cannot see here or here. Next we have the survivor cards. Now all characters, whether they're survivors or zombies, are called actors in the game. So if I use the term actor, it's actually a term from the rule book, and basically anybody who is an actor is either a survivor or a zombie, but it's a generic term to represent any creature inside the game. With our survivors, every player is going to have a survivor board. Across the top of the survivor board, you're going to notice a track. It's going to have numbers all the way from 1 to 43, and it's also going to be color coded. You're going to have a blue zone, a yellow zone, an orange zone, and all the way at the end at number 43 is the red zone. It can keep going, but nothing past 43 is tracked. Below it, you're going to notice a whole bunch of skills, and basically as you kill zombies, your survivor is going to slowly be leveling up. A single zombie kill is worth 1 experience point. Some adventure objectives are going to give you 5 experience points, and killing an abomination, if you can somehow manage it, and it's very hard to do, is also worth 5 experience points. As you level up through the zones, you're going to start getting more skills. Now, as you level to the yellow zone, this person is going to get that specific action when they level up, and each survivor has different abilities they're going to get as they level up, so all these survivors play just slightly differently. Once you reach the orange zone, though, you have to actually decide which one of these 2 special abilities you're going to get. And when you finally reach the red zone, you have a decision between 3 special abilities. Now you can't go back and get any of the prior missed abilities, so you can't eventually get the one you didn't pick. Once you pick one, that's your permanent ability for the rest of the game, or until you end up as zombie food. Down below you're going to notice a section of 5 silhouettes that just happen to match in the size of the cards. The front 2 silhouettes are currently equipped items, and they say cards in hand. The 3 silhouettes in back are items that are in your inventory and are cards in reserve. You can switch items from front to back, and you can only carry a total of 5 items. And notice that a wound card also takes up an inventory slot. Next we have equipment cards. Now there's a couple different kinds of equipment cards that you're going to get. You're going to search through an equipment deck every time you take a search action in the game. Now the rules state you can only take a search action in one of the rooms, but there are a couple scenarios online that you can download. Actually I think there's only one scenario, but somebody may have to correct me on that one, but there's one scenario that a player made that actually allows you to search dumpsters. But again, that's a player-made scenario, so if someone makes reference to searching dumpsters, that's from a player-made scenario. The actual rules state that you can only search buildings. And you can also search buildings an unlimited amount of time, so if you just hunker down in one of these buildings, you can keep searching as long as the zombies will let you. Of course, the trick to that is, when you're searching through the deck, you can end up finding a zombie. There's also random items, which can either be considered as useless, or they can also be mission objectives. And they actually, if they're not mission objectives, they actually do have a good purpose. If your survivor is ever injured, they have to actually take one item from the inventory and replace it with a wound card. So even if they have extra slots, like for instance if you had that canned food and a baseball bat, if you took a wound, you have to get rid of one of those cards. Now, are you going to take care of your baseball bat and throw it away, your only weapon, or you can get rid of one of the cans of food and take that wound? Obviously, you're going to take the wound, and the bad thing to remember is that if you ever take 2 wounds, your survivor is removed from the game permanently. I'm going to explain the cards in a little more detail right now. There's a couple different weapons in the game. There are melee weapons, and then there are ranged weapons. Now the way you tell the difference is, well, you can look at the picture and make it obvious, or you can see the fact that there's a 0 for range, or a 0 for 1 for range, 0 for 1 for range, or a 0 for range down on the bottom. You're also going to notice there's a couple symbols on these cards. Right here you're going to see what looks like a door and what looks like a ear on a blue sign. And down here you're going to look what looks like a wounded or bleeding silhouette and another ear sign. Now the ear sign means that anytime you use this item to open a door, it makes no sound. Anytime you use this item as a weapon to attack a zombie, it's going to make no sound. Whereas you have something like the axe, which you'll notice that if you use it to open a door, it does make a sound. But if you use it for hacking apart zombies, it doesn't make any sounds. Then you have items such as the gun, which cannot be used to open the doors. No symbol for that. And you also see that if you use it for shooting at zombies, it makes noise. Noise is very important in this game, like all good zombie flicks. Anytime you make noise, it's going to create noise in whichever area of the board you're in. And zombies, being good little zombies, they're going to go towards pretty much the loudest noise in the game. It's a good tactic to use, something to keep in mind, but sometimes you want noise and sometimes you don't want noise. On the bottom of all the cards you're going to see a couple numbers and some boxes. The first number is range. You'll see that this gun can be used at a target in the same zone as you or up to one zone away. Again, no attacking diagonal. Whenever you use this SMG, you're going to use 3 dice to roll. And any roll of 5 or higher is going to do 1 point of damage. Now all standard zombies in the game, including runners, only take 1 point of damage to kill. The fatties take 2 points of damage to kill. And the final big boy, the abomination, takes 3 points of damage to kill. The tricky part about this is that damage is not cumulative, so if you can't do the amount of damage in one hit to take it out, you can't kill it. So if you were perhaps to use something like the crowbar, which does 1 damage against the fatty, you're going to be swinging away for turn after turn after turn while he's taking a bite out of your left leg, and he's going to win that fight. The one thing that makes the abomination so dangerous to deal with is the fact that there are no instantly drawable weapons in the game that can actually kill the abomination. The only way to take out the abomination is by building a Molotov cocktail, which is built by finding the bottle and the gas can, and then you combine the 2 cards to make the Molotov cocktail. You'll see that the damage on the Molotov cocktail is a lot, which is 3 or higher. Again, it's the only card, the only weapon in the game that will take out the abomination. There are no other weapons in the game that can take out the abomination. And finally we come down to the spawning of the zombies. Now there's 2 different ways a zombie will spawn in the game. One is at the end of every zombie turn, you're going to turn over one of these zombie cards. And you're going to notice that these cards have a whole bunch of numbers and silhouettes on them, and they're color coded. And basically how this is going to work is you're going to find the player, survivor, actor, who is the highest level out of all the players. So it doesn't matter if you have a 5-player game, 4 of the players at the blue level, 1 of the players somehow got to the red level, you're going to spawn at the red level. So you want to try to make sure all the survivors are leveling up at a nice even keel. You're going to draw one of these zombie spawn cards for every spawn location on the board. Spawn locations, and these are predetermined per scenario. Every scenario will tell you how to put the different spawn locations. You'll draw one of these cards, find out which player has the highest experience level, and you're going to spawn that many zombies according to the card. So if your highest level was your blue level, you spawn 2 walkers at this area right here. If your highest level character was level 3, was in the yellow, you would spawn 2 walkers at a spawn area. If your highest level character is in the orange, you're actually going to spawn 3 runners at a zombie spawning area. And if your highest level character is in the red, you're actually end up getting 4 fatties. And the really nice, nasty thing about the fatties is every time you spawn a fatty, each one of them comes with 2 of their own walkers. So this card will be really, really hard to run into and survive because you're going to get 4 fatties and 8 walkers from 1 spawn zone. And now remember, one of these cards is going to be drawn for each spawn zone. So if you are in the red zone, you're going to draw the red for each one of these locations. So in this case, if you're in the red zone, you get 7 walkers, 2 fatties, 4 more fatties, along with their walker friends. The other way you're going to spawn zombies in the game is if you ever open a door to a building. As soon as you open a door to a building by using one of the items that you have to use to open a door, and again it has to have the symbol for open doors, so if you didn't have this axe in this example, you could not open the door with that submachine gun. You'd have to find an item that allows you to open the door. All you gotta do is spend an action to open a door, and you're gonna spawn zombies in every single zone of this building the moment you open the door. You're simply gonna draw a card, and if you're in the blue zone, you're gonna spawn that many zombies in that zone. And you're going to do that for every zone in the building. So opening doors can be very deadly. Those are the two ways the zombies are going to spawn on the map. Either at the end of the turn they're going to spawn at the zombie spawn points, or a player on their turn is going to open a door. Once a door is open, there's only one way to close it, and that's through a skill. Unfortunately, none of the starting survivors that come with the base game, I do not have the Kickstarter version of the game, so this may be different than the Kickstarter version, but none of the survivors in the base retail version of the game have the skill that allows players to close the door after a door has been opened. One more final thing to show you really quick that's really important, and it's a strong polarizing concept in Zombicide. I'll get further into that when I get into my review of the game, but one final thing to explain to you is melee targeting and range targeting. We'll start with melee targeting first. Anytime you're making a melee attack, if you're in the same zone as your target making a melee attack, you're allowed to apply your damage to any of your targets. So if this survivor was in this zone, and for some reason she actually managed to find the chainsaw and managed to use it, she'd roll the dice for her chainsaw, and she had to apply those dice if they're hits to any target. So she's going to target the walker, and the fatty, the abomination, or the runner. When it comes to range combat though, range combat is order of target preset, and you cannot affect who your targets are without finding the scope and the rifle, and there are only 2 scopes in the entire search deck. Now when it comes to range combat, and this also applies to vehicles, anytime you're using range target or driving a vehicle, targeting goes in a preset order, and that preset order is any survivors in the space you're targeting, then walkers, then fatties and abominations, and finally runners. What this means is that if our humble survivor here, Doug, decided to take a submachine gun and lay into this square, all of his damage would be applied to our poor little survivor here first, which that just would have killed her, before any of that damage can be applied to the zombies. Now if there are no survivors in that square, that damage gets to be applied to all walkers first, and if there's any leftover damage, it would be applied towards the fatties, the abomination, and if you manage to take them out, it would take care of the walker, or correction, the runner. Here's a trick to this. The submachine gun only does 1 point of damage. Fatty needs a 2 damage weapon, abomination needs a 3 damage weapon. So there could be a veritable horde of runners in this space, and if you don't have enough damage weapon to take out this guy and this guy, you'll never be able to target those runners at all unless you're using the scope and the rifle. And you'll notice that the rifle only does 1 point of damage, so without the scope, it's kind of a weak weapon. So again, to reiterate, if you have a zone and you're using range combat, your first target is, and you don't have any control over this, is any other survivors in the square that you're shooting into. Your next targets are your walkers. Your final targets, or your next targets, are your fatties and abominations. And finally, if you manage to remove them from a square, you can finally start targeting runners with your shots. Here's the thing though, there are no ranged weapons except the Molotov cocktail that do 3 damage or more. So if you ever have an abomination in a square, you probably shouldn't use a gun, because you're never going to be able to damage it, and you're never going to be able to hit the runners in the same square. This also applies for cars the same way. If you have a survivor in the square and all these miniatures, and you drive this car into the square, you're going to run over your fellow survivor first, then you get to run over walkers, and then your car is going to bounce off the zombie abomination and the fatty, because a car cannot do enough damage to take them out, and you will never get to those walkers. It's just one important thing to remember when it comes to range combat and driving in Zombicide. Zombicide is played over phases. First the players are going to go, and then the zombies are going to go, then let's go back to the player zombies. Player zombies, so either all the players are wiped out, or they manage to reach the victory condition, or if there's some kind of scenario that has a fail condition, if they reach that fail condition, the game is over. The game does have player elimination, so if your survivor takes 2 damage, you are out of the game. And it's up to the remaining survivors to see if they can pull off the victory condition. On a player's turn, they're going to get 3 actions, and as they level up they may get extra actions, extra abilities, but to start the game you're going to get 3 actions. Those actions are: you can move 1 space for 1 action, unless you have a special ability that allows you to move 2 spaces like Wanda does. Her special ability is right in the beginning of the game is that for 1 action she can actually move 2 spaces. You can search a space if you're inside a building, and that simply just requires you to flip over a card, and whatever, if it's a weapon, you can add it to your inventory. The next thing you can do is you can open a door, and that requires you to have an item that can actually open the door, and you simply just spend an action to open the door, flip it over, and then you would spawn that entire building with zombies by going zone to zone, flipping a card for each one of the zones, and spawning that entire building. The next thing you can do is you can reorganize your inventory. Now that means you move something from your backpack into your hand, or if you're in the same zone with another survivor, you can actually trade items between each other. Again, all these things cost 1 action. You can do range combat. If you're within line of sight of a zombie, you're free to make 1 range combat attack, rolling whatever dice that you, depending on whatever weapon you use. So if you're using a shotgun and you're within range of this fatty, you could roll the dice and either score hits or get misses. The other thing you can do is you can do melee combat. If you're within the same zone with a zombie, just roll the amount of dice for a melee weapon. You have the axe. 4, that would have hit the zombie. And an axe does do 2 damage, so that would have taken out the fatty. You can get in or out of a vehicle. It costs 1 action to get into a vehicle, 1 action to get out of it. Once you're in the vehicle, you can drive it by moving it square to square by using up your actions. You can change who's driving the vehicle. For instance, if the car is not full, you can exchange who is the driver and who is the passengers. If the vehicle is full, meaning that there's 4 people inside the vehicle, you cannot exchange drivers with passengers, but if there's 3 or less, you can exchange, and that's simply 1 action to bring the next person up to go. If there's any objective tokens on the board, you can spend 1 action to grab one of those objective tokens. Simply enter the space, spend an action to take the objective token, whatever that may give you. You can also choose to make noise, and this is for strategic purposes if you want to attract a zombie towards your direction versus having to go after your friends. The zombies will go over whatever square they see has survivors in it. If they don't see any squares with survivors, they're going to go towards the noisiest zone. So if you continue to make more noise than your fellow survivors, eventually the zombies are going to come after you. Finally, you can decide just to stop taking actions and not use all of your actions. After all the players have taken their turn, it's now the zombie's turn. And the way zombies work are very simple. If a zombie is in the same place, same space with a survivor, they're going to automatically attack any survivors in that space. And if there's multiple survivors in that space, the survivors in that space get to decide who is going to actually take that wound. Zombies always hit, and they always attack the survivors in the same space that they're in. If a zombie is not in a space with a survivor, they will move towards the survivors based on amount of noise and based on line of sight. After all the zombies have taken their actions, and all zombies will get 1 action unless they are a runner. If they are a runner, they will take 1 action with the rest of the zombies, and after they have all taken the 1 action, the runner is going to get an additional action. That means if you start the zombie phase in the same zone with a runner, they're going to do 1 damage to a survivor, and then for their second action, they're going to do another point of damage to another survivor. Or if they're in a different zone from the survivors, their first action will be to move into the same zone with the survivors, Their second action will be to wound one of the survivors. Finally, after all the zombies have performed their 1 or 2 actions, every zombie spawn point is going to randomly spawn zombies based on where the experience level is for the survivors. Once that's done, all the noise tokens are removed from the board. Very easy cleanup. That's the end of the complete turn. It is now time for the survivors to take their turn again. Now that I've explained to you how to play Zombicide, I'm going to show you a sample scenario. This is a 100% made up scenario. I could have used one of the scenarios in the book, but this is actually going to be better. It's going to show you one of the advantages of the game. It's going to show you how easy it is actually to create scenarios for Zombicide. There's 10 in the book. There's actually multiple scenarios online that you can find. Go to Board Game Geek or anywhere like that. You're going to find extra scenarios. But again, I want to show you a quick made up scenario just so you can see really how simple it is to make up scenarios for Zombicide. We're going to make up a pretend scenario. We're going to pretend that the survivors need to search these buildings to find a key to the cop car, drive the police car off the board to win the game. We have 3 X's. You'll notice that one of them is green on the back. We're going to simply take them, mix them up, make sure there's no green showing so I'm not cheating. We'll put them simply 1 in each one of the buildings. And we'll make it a little more challenging. And we'll say for the scenario, the survivors need to find the X that has the green key on it, or green X, and that's going to represent the key. They find the key, bring it to the police car, drive the police car off the board, and the survivors are the winner. If they fail to do that before all the survivors are wiped out, they lose. Again, not an existing scenario, totally made up. I'm going to start off with the survivor's turn, and we'll pick Wanda to go first. Wanda is our rollerblader. Her special ability is for every move action, she actually gets to move 2 squares. So 3 actions, brand new game, everybody only gets 3 actions. No special abilities except for Ned, who gets a free search action. And we'll start with Wanda. She'll spend 1 action, move 2 zones. Spend another action, move 2 more zones. And she has 1 action left, and if you notice, she actually has a pistol, and I want her to hold point from where she's at strategically. So for her third action, she's going to create noise for 2 total noise. Remember, each survivor creates 1 noise, so this is a 3 noise zone. This is now a 2 noise zone. And that'll be the end of Wanda's turn. We'll then move up to Doug. Doug is equipped with a fire axe, and he could use it to break down the door, and that would be good, except that we're going to have to worry about the zombies. They're going to have to pop out here, and there may be too much noise. So we'll not take Doug's turn yet. We're going to go and move directly to Josh, who can prop open a door without making any noise using any crowbar. So he's going to spend 1 action to break open this door. And that's going to spawn this entire building. We'll spawn this room first. Draw a Zombicide card. We're still in the blue since it's a brand new game. We see that we end up getting 1 walker. Place that 1 walker on the board in that room. We'll move to this room. And we'll get a fatty. This is a pretty rough start already. So that'll be 1 fatty with 2 more walkers. Spawn this room. And we'll get a walker. This room. And we'll see we get 1 walker. This room. See, we get 1 more walker. And finally we'll spawn this room. And one up with 1 final walker. We're still in the blue phase of the game, and it's kind of a pretty basic tactic to get the buildings open in the blue phase of the game, because if you open these doors in the red phase, you're going to get absolutely swarmed with zombies. And I think I forgot to mention this earlier, but if at any time you need to place a zombie on the board and you're unable to do so because you do not have any miniatures, all the zombies of that type that you should have spawned get an additional activation on that turn. So good thing to always try to keep the zombie population down, which is hard because these things are going to start coming at you. You're going to start getting 20, 30, 40 of these zombies on the board. Josh is going to take his second action, and he is going to move into the room, and for his third action he's going to try to take out the zombie. Crowbar rolls 1 die. On a 4 or more it does a point of damage, and he misses. Josh has no more actions remaining. We're now going to move to Ned with his super duper frying pan, and he's going to move into the room for 1 action. His second action, he's going to try to use that frying pan on that zombie, because we know how deadly those frying pans are. And nothing's going to happen. He's going to use his third action for another frying pan, bopping upside the head, to no avail. Finally, we will take Doug, who will also move into this room. Hopefully he will have a little bit more success with his nice little fire axe there. Fire axe rolls 1 die, hits on a 4+, and does 2 damage. Okay, for Ned's second action, he does enough damage to take out the zombie. I'm sorry, Doug. And Doug's also going to get 1 experience points for that. We'll move him up to the 1 level. And Doug still has 1 action remaining. He moved, and then his second action was to take out the zombie. For his final action, he's actually going to search the room, and he will find a katana. He's going to go ahead and equip that right now. Probably going to end up trading it over, but it's actually an upgrade to his fire axe at this point, because it does roll 2 dice. Our survivors' turns are finished. Now we get to move all the zombies. The zombie phase will start. First, we look to see if there's any zombies in a zone with our survivors. Fortunately, there are none. So we get to move all the zombies. First, they're going to move towards line of sight. If line of sight doesn't work, they're going to move towards the loudest zone. And that's going to put these guys in trouble on both instances, because not only are they the loudest, because there's 3 survivors, each survivor counts as 1 noise, versus Wanda and her 1 noise, which only equals 2. They're also in line of sight for this group of zombies and this group of zombies. So this zombie is going to move in. This big old fatty is going to move in with his nice 2 little buddy walkers. This one's going to move 1 zone towards our heroes. This one will move 1 zone towards our heroes. And this one will also move 1 zone towards our heroes. It's now time to spawn all the zombie locations. Always good to start off clockwise and stick with that pattern throughout the game. We will start over here on this square right here. And we will spawn 1 zombie walker. Move right here. Sorry, right here. And we will get, aha, we're lucky, nothing happened this round. And finally we'll move to the final one here. And, guess we got lucky again. Nothing happens in that spawn zone. That's now the end of the zombie spawn phase, and now we do the end of phase cleanup, which is basically removing any noise tokens from the board. We're going to remove this 1 noise token from the board right here, and there are no other noise tokens. So now we're at the point where we get to start our survivor's turn again. We'll go ahead and start with Wanda. She's going to move 1 space for 1 action. With her second action, she's going to unload with her nice pistol. She needs a 4 or better to hit, and she misses. She's going to take her third action and score a 5, taking out this zombie right here. That's going to give Wanda 1 experience point, putting her still in the blue. She's used up all 3 of her actions, and now it's deciding which one of these survivors we're going to have move next. I think we're going to start with Doug, who's got the fire axe and the katana. Unfortunately, only the fire axe is the only thing that can take out that fatty, and I'm thinking that's probably the best thing to take out right now is that fatty. So he's going to take his first action with the fire axe. He needs a 4 or higher, and he got it. The fatty is now destroyed. Doug is going to gain 1 experience point, moving him up to 2, and Doug still has 2 actions left. Doug is now going to attack with his katana for a little bit more slicing dice and efficiency. Even though it only does 1 point of damage, it does roll more dice. It rolls 2 dice. And each roll of 4 or higher is going to take out one of those zombies. So for a second action, 2 misses. Doug's final action, and he got a 6 and a 4. Both those will hit, and both of those will take out 1 zombie apiece. That's 2 more experience points for Doug, who is now at 4. 3 more experience points, and he'll be in the yellow zone. Ned has the old frying pan, and he's probably not going to be too good at taking out zombies, so I'll probably use him to search. So why don't we just move to Josh with his crowbar. We'll roll the die for our first action. We'll get a 5, and that will take out the zombie, one remaining zombie in the zone. And Josh gets to gain experience point for that, putting him at 1. All our survivors are still in the blue zone, and for Josh's next action, he's going to go ahead and search the area, and he's going to find a shotgun. He'll go ahead and equip that immediately. And Josh has one action left. He attacked once, he searched once, and he's got a nice shotgun action. I think Josh is going to perform a little shotgun action on the nice little zombie in the next zone over for his final action. Shotgun rolls 2 dice, hits on a 4 or higher. Both missed, and we are now out of actions for him. Ned isn't really equipped to take out any zombies right now, so let's go ahead and do a search action for him. And we'll find a scope. Not really too useful right now for him, but if he finds a rifle, it'll be a good thing. Each survivor can only do 1 search action per turn, so he can't repeatedly search on the same turn. But on the next turn, if he's still in that same zone, he's free to search that zone again. He just can't do it on the same turn. He has 2 actions left. He's going to use one of those actions to be a little bit brave, probably a foolish maneuver to be truthful, but he's going to move 1 over, and hopefully he can take out that zombie. He needs a 6 or higher. There's a 6. Zombie's taken out. It's been beaten upside the head by a frying pan, and Ned gets 1 experience point. That is all of Ned's actions. His turn is over, and all 4 of our survivors are gone. That's the end of the second survivors phase. We'll do 1 more zombie phase. It's now the zombie's turn. We will look for any zombies that are in zones with survivors. There are none, so they will move towards the noisiest survivors. Well, we'll see that he's 1, 2, but line of sight and line of sight. He's going to move towards the noisiest survivors, which will go right here. And he is going to move towards the closest, towards the noisiest survivors also. And he will move right here. And that's it for our zombies. Now we get to spawn zombies. Starting here, we're still in the blue. And we will get 1 walker. Check this spot up here. And we'll get 1 walker. And finally we check for the spawning point, and we will get nothing. We got lucky. And I just noticed I went a little bit too quickly there. Wasn't paying close attention to the cards. And that first one I drew right there was actually a manhole cover. So let me go ahead and fix that really quick because I wasn't paying attention. I'm sorry about that. Anytime a card pops up with a manhole cover on it, you need to spawn a zombie on every tile that has a survivor on it and has a manhole cover on it. Now, since Wanda is technically on both tiles, she's going to spawn a zombie here. I'm going to pick this one up because he would have never spawned there because that was my error. That zombie will spawn there. There are no survivors on this tile, so nobody's going to spawn here. There are survivors on this tile though, so we're going to spawn 1 more zombie right here on this manhole cover. That's the end of the spawning for this turn. We would normally do cleanup if there were any noise tokens on the board, but there are none. Actually, there would have been for speed. I didn't show you, but when he fired his gun, he would have got a noise token for the gun, and he would have got a noise token for the shotgun. Forgot to do that for speed, sorry. But that would have been, at this point, would have cleaned up the noise tokens. And that would have ended the second round. Game will continue on like this until the survivors either all reach their goal or all the survivors are wiped out. Normally at this point in one of my game reviews, I like to talk about friendliness value of a board game. I'm a father. I have 2 children. Love to play games with my younger children. They're 4 and 7. And that's why I always think it's very important to mention how playable I think a board game is with families, especially with younger kids. It's going to be kind of pointless in this aspect because while Zombicide is a game that you could play with up to 6 players, so technically you could play it with a family, There's lots of graphic images in the game. Now, the board has blood on it. The cards have blood on them. The cover of the rulebook has blood, brains, guts, everything being splattered all over. The box itself, same stuff. I mean, the game is called Zombicide for a reason. You're blowing up hundreds of zombies. You're surviving the zombie apocalypse, and it doesn't pull any punches. If you have teenagers, it's a good game to play with teenagers. One caveat to that is the fact that the game does have player elimination, which isn't going to fly too well for a lot of families. I mean, it's okay if the survivors are all doing good as a group, but if you're playing a 4-player game and one of the players gets eliminated early in the game, and that's highly possible with this game. I mean, each hero only can take 2 wounds before they're knocked out of the game, and you're out. I mean, there's no respawn rules in this unless you decide to add some homebrew or something like that, but when you take those 2 wounds, you're out. You might as well go find another game to play, or you're going to sit back or watch or be the person who controls the zombies. But once you lose your player out, and that kind of reduces its possibility in my mind, as a family game. If you have a family of 4, 5, or 6, and you're looking for a game to play with the family, I'd say probably skip on this one as a family game. Zombicide is designed to be played by 1 to 6 players. Now, the game does require a minimum of 4 survivors to play, which means that if you're playing solo, you're going to have to control 4 survivors. If you're playing with 2 players, each person's going to have to take control of 2 survivors, or possibly what you can do is each person's going to take care of 3 survivors apiece, which may be required because this game does come with 10 scenarios, and they are balanced for a certain player count. Some of them are going to be very challenging with only 4 survivors, and if you pick some of them and they are the more longer scenarios, you're going to need to have each person controlling 3 survivors. In a 3-player game, each person will take out 2 survivors apiece, and then in a 4-player game, obviously each person is going to control 1 survivor. 5-player game, 1 survivor. 6-player game, each person will take out 1 survivor. The game can play anywhere from an hour and 15 minutes. It's probably going to be your quickest time for some of the faster, simpler scenarios, all the way up to 2.5 and possibly even 3 hours for, there's 2 scenarios I think can possibly go up to 3 hours. I've seen them play about 2:15 to 2:30, but I can see them being stretched out to about 3 hours. And again, there's lots of homebrew for this game, lots of player-made scenarios and everything like that. Basically, playtime on this is going to vary widely, anywhere from an hour to 15 to about 3 hours, depending on what scenario you pick. And player count is also going to affect that also. Zombicide plays, in my opinion, best with 3 or 4 players. It's okay. It's a okay co-op game because you can play 1 player controlling all 4. It's also good to play with 2 players, and each person can control 2, not that bad, but I think the perfect player count for this game is 3 or 4. And there's 2 reasons why I say that. The biggest one is going to be the player elimination. If you're playing a 3-player game with each person controlling 2 survivors, if 1 player loses a survivor, it's not a big deal. They still have 1 survivor to control, and they're still not totally knocked out of the game. And if another player loses another scenario, again, they're not, or another player loses a survivor, they're not out of the game. And even a 3rd player can do that. You still got 3 survivors, and you still got 3 players. With a 4-player game, it's the same thing, but if 1 player gets knocked out, they're basically out of the game. But as difficult as this game ramps up, because you're going to start seeing just literally tons and tons of zombies on the board. I mean, don't be surprised if you start seeing like 30 or even 40 zombies on the board at one point. It'll just start spawning quickly. You're going to get some cards that are going to say spawn 7 zombies at one spawn point once you get to the higher levels. So it's going to happen. And if you're a 4-player game and 1 player gets knocked out and then a 2nd player gets knocked out, these last 2 people, they're not going to live much longer. When you get to the 6-player game, though, it's possible for, in a 6-player game, to have 1 person knocked out and have the other 5 players still survive and actually doing pretty strongly for a good half hour, 45 minutes, hour. They can even go on to win the scenario, and this 1 lone player is going to be left twiddling their thumbs or finding a solitaire board game on the board game shelf. Basically, what I'm saying in a long-winded attempt is just saying that Zombicide, in my opinion, is going to be played best as a 3. Let me correct that, as a 2, 3, or 4-player game. 5-player is kind of iffy, and I definitely will not play the 6-player version unless you're choosing one of the shorter hour and 15, hour and a half long scenarios. I would not choose one of those 3-hour scenarios in a 6-player game, because if that one person gets knocked out, they're going to basically be twiddling their thumbs for the next 2 to 3, possibly 2 to 3 hours watching other players play. The final question is Zombicide a good game, and is it worth your money? There are quite a few negatives to Zombicide. The biggest one and the most important one, and I'll say this even to people who know how to play the game and haven't looked at it, I would definitely recommend downloading the revised 3rd edition rulebook. A good example of the reasons why is you'll see like this scenario right here, you'll see nothing right here. In the revised version of the rulebook, you'll see something very, very nice that they finally decided to add. You'll see that it has difficulty, amount of survivors they suggest, and actual playing time for this scenario. Another thing you also notice is that some of the scenarios actually had a few errors on them, and this actually has the corrected versions of those scenarios, which is a nice bonus, especially for scenario number 6, which is the grindhouse. I'm sorry, is that scenario 7? I'm going off the top of my head now. Scenario number 7, the grindhouse. You look right here, and you'll see the amount of noise tokens that start on the board right here in the updated corrected version of scenario number 7, grindhouse. And then if you look in the rule book for the original game, you'll see the corrections, which will show you that this scenario is actually played a little bit differently, and it does make a difference in the long run of the game. The next negative I had for Zombicide was the range targeting rules. Now, I understand why they put these range targeting rules in the game, and they're there. Well, actually, let me take that back. I don't understand why they were put there. I think there was a much better way to balance the game, but what they put in there was in an effort to adjust the difficulty of the game to make sure that ranged weapons simply don't overpower melee weapons. And the reason why they made this, I'm going to call it a pretty bad decision on their part, is to make sure that ranged weapons don't outperform melee weapons. I think it's pretty silly that if you have all these zombies in this zone standing in this one square, and yes, this is an unrealistic demonstration, but this is just what I find kind of odd about this. This one hero, survivor right here, who is a police officer, reminiscent of, if you watch The Walking Dead or read the comic books, you can pretty much see who Phil is based on. This police officer, who is a trained police officer, will shoot into this square right here, and if he decides to shoot this pistol into this square right here with all these mobs, zombies, he's going to roll 1 die, and if he gets a hit, little old Wanda over here in the corner is going to take 1 wound. And then if he spends another action to shoot into this zone again in an effort to take out those zombies, he's going to roll, and dice aren't liking me, but let's say he rolled a 6. Guess who's going to take the next wound and who's going to be removed from the game? Finally, he will now take his 3rd action, and that'll take out one of these walkers out of the game. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. I think it makes thematically 0 sense. Again, I understand they put it in there for balancing issues to prevent ranged weapons from overpowering melee weapons, but I think there are much better ways to do that. I think they could have just simply said that if you roll to attack and you miss, then you must roll another attack against one of the survivors in the zone. I could have lived with that, but what it is in the rules right now, I really disagree with. It also goes the same for a vehicle. If you have a vehicle and you're driving it and you have one lone survivor in here, and again, I'm over exaggerating the point, but I'm just trying to make this point of how kind of silly the whole rule is. If you drive this car into this zone full of all these zombies, you're going to roll 1 die for every single zombie that is in that space and every single survivor, which is about 15 dice, and you're going to roll. And the first person you're going to run over is a little old Wanda over here. Then you're going to start rolling over the zombies. And then you're going to bounce off of the fatties. You're going to bounce off the abomination. And all these little runners are going to run around your vehicle, figuratively, because you can't hit them because your car bounces off the fatties and the abomination. Can understand the Abomination for a challenging point. I can see him picking up the car and throwing it, or whatever thematic reason you would give, but I don't understand why little old Wanda in a big old city street, double lane city street in a big city, is going to be the first one rolled over by, or run over by, the police car. One other point I'd like to mention about the cars that I didn't get into because I wanted to wait till I gave my final verdict on the game. Cars don't offer you protection from other cars or from guns or anything like that. So for some crazy reason, Wanda was behind the wheel of this car and our nice little survivor Doug here just happened to be parked in this zone for some strange reason. I know it's terrible tactically, but just as an example, Wanda drove her car into this zone. Guess who the first person who's going to get run over is? You got it. Doug. You're going to roll 1 die for every miniature in the space, which is going to be 8 dice. And any hits are going to be applied to Doug first, giving Doug wounds, and any remaining dice are going to be applied towards the walkers first. And then the car is going to bounce off the fatties, and the runners will never be touched. Again, thematically, pretty ridiculous. Game balancing, yeah, I can see it, but I think there was a much, much better way to balance this, and I'll give you some suggestions at the end of this of some of the home rules that we've been using in our house. The next thing that I don't like about the game, and again, this is something that I've house ruled out, is basically what I like to call the conveyor belt version of trading in this game. There is no limit to the amount of times you can trade an item in this game, so we can simply start a turn with Josh, who has a nice shotgun here. And if he's in a zone with all of our survivors, old Josh here with a shotgun, he can take 2 shots at this zone, or I should say he can spend 2 actions taking shots at this zone. And then when he is done, he can take his 3rd action to trade that shotgun to Ned, who can then take 2 more shots into that zone with the shotgun. For his 3rd action, he can trade the shotgun to Doug, who can spend 2 actions taking shots into the zone to take out zombies. And for his 3rd action, if there were any zombies left alive at this point, he can hand off the shotgun to Wanda, who, you guessed it, can take shots with the shotgun. And I'm sure by now all these zombies would have been dead and everybody would have leveled up a little bit. And Wanda could have spent her last action to do something. Again, it's not a good rule. It should have been something that should have been caught in playtest, and they should have said 1 trade per item per round. So for instance, this shotgun could be traded once it's traded, flip it upside down, some kind of reminder to say that that cannot be traded anymore this round. Again, it's one of those silly things that goes along with the targeting of the game. I think it's silly. I think it's something that they could have easily found a better rule for. And finally, and I've already mentioned this before, the player elimination. It's not going to be that bad in a 1-hour game if you're playing some of the quicker scenarios, but if you're playing a 6-player game and you happen to be Doug and you get eliminated, and trust me, survivors are going to get eliminated in this game. If you can make it through an entire game without taking a wound or 2, you've had some blessed dice, or you've had some blessed draws from the card deck or whatever, but it's a rarity. This is a game where one player eventually is going to make a sacrifice to save the team or something like that, or the dice are just going to go wrong and the survivor is going to go down. And in a 6-player game, if you get to stand off and watch the rest of the game for 2 hours, not going to be very exciting for you at all. There are 2 other things that I wasn't too impressed about with Zombicide, and both of these are pretty minor, to be absolutely honest, but I'm going to mention them anyways. The first one I'm going to mention is the Abomination. I think he should have been a little bit more, well, hate to use the word, but he should have been a little bit more abominable. The only difference between the Abomination and the Fatty is that the Abomination takes a Molotov cocktail to kill, and it's the only thing that can kill him in the base game, whereas the Fatty can be killed by things like the shotgun. I think the Abomination, to make him a little more challenging, I think he should have been able to break open doors or done something a little bit better, maybe throw cars, throw something to make him just a little more mean or make him feel like more of an abomination. And actually, in our house rules, we've actually started saying that if the Abomination is on the board and any player's in the yellow level, he can actually break down any door in his way. He will literally take the most direct route to the heroes. And it's actually made the game a little bit tougher, but the main reason why we added that is because we actually added a rule to make Phil a little bit stronger, but I'll get into that in a moment. And the final thing I wanted to mention is that there is an ability in the game called Lock It Down. None of the survivors in the base game have it, and I can only assume that there's either an expansion coming out that has it, or one of the Kickstarter special reward survivors has the ability. But anyways, what Lock It Down says is that once a door is open, if you use your lockdown ability, you can actually shut a door. Now, if you theoretically, and again, I don't have any survivors who do this, but this is long-term thinking, you theoretically have a building such as this and you lock down both doors, well, there's no rule in the game stating that you can't keep searching a building until your eyes basically fall out of your head, so to speak. So technically, if you get this Lock It Down ability, you can have these survivors each search every round and keep searching and searching, except for the occasional zombie. But there's only 4 of these ambush cards in the game, and it really isn't that scary at all. You really can take care of them pretty quickly. But you can basically keep searching and searching and searching until you get the best weapons for your guys, 2 Molotov cocktails. Then when your turn comes around, when there's 65 of the zombies on the board. I guess that's the max you have, is 65. When there's 65 of the zombies on the board all piled up in these 2 zones, you could technically blow out 2 Molotov cocktails, get rid of all the zombies on the board, have a clean board with all the heroes fully equipped. Again, that's an optimal situation. I don't know if that is something that a Kickstarter ability was added in, but I do know that Lock It Down ability makes me question the unlimited searching rules. At this point, you're probably thinking I'm about ready to say that Zombicide is what would happen if Michael Bay ever made a board game. Pretty nice to look at, but not much substance. And you would almost be right, except for the fact that there is just some charm with Zombicide that actually makes a game with all these flaws fun. Now, granted, these flaws were very annoying, and I had to house rule a couple of them, but once you make these house rules, Zombicide goes from a game where you question some of the balancing decisions all the way up to a game that's actually quite good, especially for a zombie game. It's really hard to explain, but there's just some visceral joy in playing a game where you literally have dozens of zombies all over the board, and your players are basically fighting for their lives, taking wounds and everything like that, and you're getting on the verge of losing survivors, and it's just something visceral and something enjoyable about it. It's just a lot of tension, makes the game a lot of fun, and it makes up for the shortcomings. And again, like I said, there are some house rules that we've included in the house. The first big one is that the police officer, good old Phil over here, we decided that good old Phil gets to start with a scope. And basically this does 2 things. One, we allow it to be in his inventory. And again, this is a house rule. This isn't authorized by or any kind of house rule or anything like that that you're going to find on the forums or anything like that. But what we said is that Phil gets to start with a scope in his backup inventory. And we decided that anytime that Phil has this scope in his backup inventory and for some reason has not lost it, any weapon he is equipped with basically has the power of the scope. Now, I know that at the red level, Phil does get the sniper ability, which is the exact same thing. This is a little more difficult because, one, it takes away one of his inventory slots, which makes a big difference in this game where 5 inventory slots can disappear really quickly. And it also allows us to have the ability that if for some reason Phil has no weapons and he gets wounded, guess what? Phil loses his scope, making it not quite as powerful as you'd think. For us, it was a good balance, a little bit added to the reality. I guess I hate to use the term reality in a board game, but for us, that was a really good decision. The next thing that I already mentioned is that we allowed for the abomination on yellow levels to basically break down doors. Makes it a lot more challenging, a lot more panicking. There are only 4 cards in the game that can spawn the abomination, so it's not like he's always going to appear, and it's possible to actually get an abomination card in the wrong experience level and have that card be discarded and not actually get the abomination on the board. I've actually played a few games where the abomination never actually showed up. The only rule that we haven't house ruled out and we haven't figured out a best way to do that is the driving rules, where if a vehicle enters the zone with a survivor, the survivor is going to be the first person to run over before any of the zombies. We haven't figured out a way around that that's going to be nice and balanced, but So far, everything else has made this game a much, much better experience for us. In my opinion, Zombicide is a couple house rules away from being a good, very enjoyable board game. For the price point, like I said earlier, you're getting a lot of good components. The plastic is great in the game. You got a lot of different molds for all the zombies, a lot of different molds for the heroes. They come in different colors, which is a nice touch, especially when you see them on the board. It's kind of nice to know that in this big old mess, you get to see exactly where all the survivors are. I like the extra rules. I like the cars mechanics. Not the mechanics of them, but I like the fact that the cars are included in the game. I like the searching, and I like the tension the game causes, and it's just really fun when you get later in the game and you just have a big old swarm of zombies just literally crawling over the board. Bottom line, Zombicide, okay game, needs a lot of house ruling to make it a good game and even close to a great game. This has been an off-the-shelf board game review looking at Zombicide. Thank you for watching.